Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kim and today we'll be discussing the discontinued attractions of Islands of Adventure. Back in September of last year, I posted a video called The Discontinued Attractions of Halloween Horror Nights, and it was pretty well received, so I thought, okay, maybe there's an audience for this, so maybe I should make it a full-time series, and here we are. So please tell me if you want to see more in the comments below. Like the video, share it, so I know that this is something that you all are interested in. All right, let's get into it. Islands of Adventure was opened in May of 1999 as the second theme park in the Universal Orlando family. It's also one of my personal favorite parks. I have a lot of love for Islands of Adventure, so it felt appropriate that I start the series here. As an ever-evolving park, it's gone through many changes in the over 25 years that it's been open, and today I want to go land by land and talk about each attraction that has closed over the years and what it was replaced with. For the sake of this series, the word attraction references any ride, show, restaurant, or experience that has closed. I will only vaguely mention any discontinued character meet and greets, as I do plan to make that the topic of a future video. All topic sources and video clips that I've used in today's videos are linked below. Now let's get into it. When the park was opened in 1999, it consisted of 6 themed lands: the Port of Entry, Seuss Landing, Lost Continent, Jurassic Park, Toon Lagoon, and Marvel Superhero Island. In 2010, the back of the park got a huge overhaul with the addition of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And then in 2016, Universal opened Skull Island, which is home to the Reign of Kong ride, bringing the total land count to 8. I will get to Harry Potter in just a little bit, but seeing as Skull Island didn't actually replace anything, I'm not really going to talk about it too much in today's video. When you first enter the park, you're immediately in the Port of Entry. This land is themed as, well, a port where adventurers from all over the world have come to trade and rest. Over the years, some of those adventurers have made homes and opened shops and restaurants in the Port of Entry, and you can see and hear evidence of their lives in the port town throughout the land. This land serves as a perfect welcome to guests, setting the stage for the many adventures that they are going to experience from their day at the park. Now, many people wouldn't consider Port of Entry as one of the lands in Islands of Adventure, mostly because of its lack of attractions. But what if I told you that once upon a time, Port of Entry did have an attraction? It's been closed for over 2 decades at this point, and it is long forgotten by most, but evidence of its existence still remains in the park today. The Island Skipper Tours were a rather simple opening day attraction. Guests would line up here at the loading dock, which can still be seen today. Much of the queue is actually still around, hidden in plain sight. Even the structure for the entrance of the attraction can be found right there. Guests would board one of 3 themed boats, which would take them across the lagoon on a calm informational tour. The destination was a now demolished dock located at the water's edge of Jurassic Park. It's said on some mornings the walk-around characters of John Hammond and Ian Malcolm might even join guests on the first boat ride of the day to welcome them to Jurassic Park. The first boat was called the Boatney, which was a repurposed, heavily decorated school bus on pontoons. The second boat was called the Tropic Trader and looked like a 19th century sailboat. And the final third boat was known as the Samplane, which was themed to look as if it was powered by an old airplane engine, including a rotating propeller. The boats were driven by the titular skippers, who were all very knowledgeable about the park. They'd point out different details and attractions that guests might miss on their own, and guests were able to see the park from a whole different vantage point. While it is true that nearly every land of IOA has an area near the lagoon to get a great view of the surrounding park, there's just something so magical about being smack dab in the middle of it all, coasting across the water and being told cool facts about the park as you go. Being that this ride closed in 2002, just 3 years after the park opened, it's unsurprising that we can find very little footage of it. There are a few possible reasons that the ride didn't last. The first was capacity. Due to the limited space on only 3 operational boats, it would oftentimes take guests just as long, if not longer, to take a boat ride to the back of the park as it would be to just walk. A lot of folks decided that there wasn't much of a point in waiting in the long queue just to get to the other side. Being that people wouldn't opt to take the boats, that meant Universal was wasting money on staffing and fuel just by operating day to day. Another possible reason for its closure was the shortened operating hours. Not only did the boats not operate in inclement weather, but the boats were also forced to shut down early on some days to get the lagoon ready for the nighttime fireworks show. More on that in just a moment. Eventually, the cost to run the ride outweighed the benefit of keeping it open, and in 2002, the island skipper tours were no more. Moving on to another discontinued experience, let's talk about the Adventure to the Stars, which was the nighttime fireworks spectacular that occurred right there on the lagoon. Now, I could find almost no information on this fireworks show, and honestly, the only reason I even believe it exists is because one user on YouTube, linked below, who uploaded their footage of the show. Being that it's camcorder footage from 2001, it's not the best quality, but you can see a wonderful little fireworks show with music, as most theme park fireworks shows were back in the day.
Good evening, adventurers!
If any of you have any information about Adventure to the Stars or any of the non-Harry Potter fireworks lagoon shows IOA may have hosted over the years, please drop your knowledge in the comments below, as I would love to learn more about it. We're moving on now to Marvel Superhero Island, the first official island of adventure. But I don't anticipate the section of this video is going to be very long. Believe it or not, Marvel hasn't really undergone a lot of changes over the years, and this could be for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you can't fix perfection. Or much more likely, number two, it's because Disney owns the rights to Marvel, and Universal is kind of just stuck with what they have. Good luck getting any new rides, and therefore good luck getting rid of any of the current rides that you have. Honestly, I'm fine with that. I love Marvel Superhero Island for exactly what it is. But for a moment, let's talk about what it was. The two biggest changes in this area are the loss of the superhero motorcade and the old version of the Incredible Hulk roller coaster. So I'll briefly discuss those two things and we'll move on. While visiting Marvel Superhero Island, you can meet the characters Spider-Man, Wolverine, Captain America, and more. And for a very long time, there was an announcement by S.H.I.E.L.D. at the top of every hour that the superheroes were needed in the area. And then the characters would come out riding on Spider motorbikes, a brand I assume Universal had a sponsorship deal with at the time. They would park their bikes just outside the Spider-Man attraction before running off to their meet and greet locations. These days, the announcement does still happen at the top of the hour by S.H.I.E.L.D., but the superheroes no longer ride out on their bikes. Instead, they run out from their backstage areas to their meet and greet locations. And if I had to guess, I'd say that they probably discontinued this motorcade due to guest safety, or it's maybe just to save time, or maybe even the sponsor with Spider motorbikes expired. The second and last significant change for this particular land is the overhaul of the Incredible Hulk coaster in 2015. While the overall ride experience remains the same, plus an awesome new soundtrack from Patrick Stump, the storyline of the ride has changed in a big way. So the original story of the Incredible Hulk roller coaster is as follows. As a guest entering the queue, you're entering Dr. Banner's lab. As told through a very 90s animation played on the televisions throughout the queue, you learn that Dr. Banner is hard at work trying to recreate the gamma radiation experiment that caused him to become the Hulk. The hope is that by blasting himself with that much radiation again, he can destroy the Hulk. As guests board the ride, you are volunteering to test the experiment with him. Entering the gamma tube, you can hear Dr. Banner doing final checks before the Hulk ultimately takes over, the experimenting fails, and the ride begins. These days, the story goes General Ross, an antagonist of the Hulk, is running gamma radiation experiments, turning guests who board the ride into Hulk-like soldiers themselves.
On behalf of General Thaddeus Ross and his staff, welcome to Gamma Base. You have volunteered to participate in an experiment based on the research of Dr. Bruce Banner. You will be exposed to high levels of gamma radiation, resulting in complete genetic metamorphosis. You may feel some slight discomfort as your genetic makeup disassembles.
While the coaster itself remains the same, long gone are the cleverly constructed 90s animation videos relaying the story to guests in the queue. Linked below, someone posted the entire queue video on YouTube. And while it's a little difficult to hear, I think the animation truly holds up and is worth checking out. I am a little bit biased as I did work at the Hulk pre-upgrade, so I do have a soft spot for the original ride, but I think that the new theme leaves a lot to be desired. Like, it's a little bit too similar to the premise of Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, if you ask me, but ultimately it's the coaster and not the story that matters to most guests. The iconic ride remains the same after all these years. Continuing on through the park, we're now headed to Toon Lagoon, another land that hasn't experienced too many changes over the years. The park opened with Popeye and Dudley Do-Right, and those are the exact rides that you can still find today. However, there was one opening day attraction that now sits empty and vacant for years and years. Opened with the park in 1999, the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater was home to a show called Pandemonium Circus. This show featured all of the classic cartoons that you'd expect to see in Toon Lagoon. Popeye and Olive Oyl, Rocky and Bullwinkle, Boris and Natasha, Dudley Do-Right and Snidely Whiplash, and a whole lot more. The show was simple enough, singing and dancing and circus acts performed with a little chaos thrown in for entertainment value. The whole show is available to watch on YouTube thanks to Storybook Amusement, linked below. Unfortunately, the show didn't resonate too much with guests, and ultimately it closed less than a year after opening. It wasn't until 2002 that a new show would take over the theater, Matt Hoffman's Crazy Freakin' Stunt Show. This show would later be named to Agro Circus due to guest complaints about the previous name being too offensive. The show was an extreme sports fan's dream come true. Professionals on bikes and skateboards and rollerblades and even motorcycles performed stunts and tricks up on the stage. They'd bring out half pipes and railings to show off their massive skills, and sometimes they'd even make the host of the show lay down so that BMX bike riders can jump over them. The show ran from 2002 to 2011 when it became a seasonal attraction, and finally the show officially ended in 2012. Since then, the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater has sat vacant. On occasion, it's used for special events in the park or even cheer competitions, but as far as daily entertainment, there hasn't been a show in the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater for over 13 years. Spooky. Other closures in Toon Lagoon include the Betty Boop store, aptly named as it sold Betty Boop merchandise. These days, you can find Betty's merch across the way in the Toon Extra store, as the Betty Boop store has since been closed to open the AP Lounge. This is a neat place for annual pass holders to come and chill out for a little bit. There is exclusive pass holder merch, and it's also where you can pick up special magnets and buttons that Universal Orlando gives away from time to time for free. Located just across from Gasoline Alley, you'll find Wasamata U, which is a gift shop filled with Universal property merchandise like The Secret Life of Pets and Despicable Me. But did you know that once upon a time, Wasamata U was an internet cafe? Guests could log on to Universal-owned computers, check their emails, or even upload photos to themselves if they needed to. According to this blog post, the prices were $10 for 30 minutes, $7 for 15 minutes, or $5 for 10 minutes. You could also purchase cell phone covers and cases, new batteries, and other essentials for all your techie toys. With the current landscape of portable chargers and ever increased smartphones, you can see why an internet cafe would no longer be needed. There's one last attraction that was lost to time in Toon Lagoon, and that is the Toon Lagoon Street Show. That was a short-lived show where all the same Toon Lagoon favorites would ride out on a trolley and perform a few songs before stopping to do meet and greets. There were a lot of street shows back in the day, none of which could be performed today due to crowd levels. However, I will talk more about this show and all the others at length in my future discontinued meet and greet character video. For now, that is the end of our Toon Lagoon attraction segment, and we find ourselves moving on to Jurassic Park. Over the years, Jurassic Park has seen a lot of change with the addition of the raptor encounter meet and greet and the Velocicoaster as well, but actually not a lot has been lost. In the last 25 years, there's really only been one major discontinued attraction in this particular part of the park, and that is the Triceratops encounter. Triceratops Encounter was a walkthrough attraction that allowed guests into a vet checkup with one of 3 Triceratops. The dino animatronics were some of the most advanced technology of the time, allowing them to move their head, blink, breathe, sneeze, stomp their feet, and more. There were 3 medical bays and 3 dinos to encounter: Sarah, Topper, and Chris. Inside the bay would be a team member playing the role of the veterinarian, with each dino to talk guests through each medical procedure that the Triceratops was getting that day. They allowed guests to ask questions, and even in the earliest days of the attractions, they allowed guests to pet the dinos. The interaction with the dinosaur was obviously the biggest draw with this attraction. However, the trail leading up to the medical bay also played a very important part in the story. Unfortunately, most guests would breeze right past it, assuming that it was just queue decoration on the way to the real attraction. There was even a pre-show with a live actor giving a demonstration and information on raptors and other dinosaurs that called Jurassic Park home. Overall, it was a very interesting attraction, possibly ahead of its time. The biggest reason I've heard for why this attraction closed was that guests simply didn't know it was there. As someone who went to the park more than a few times before the attraction's final closure, I can tell you that I also walked past it every time. The Triceratops encounter ended up closing in 2003 due to costly upkeep and low guest attendance, only to surprisingly reopen again seasonally in 2010 before it finally closed for good in 2012. YouTuber Adam the Woo has a video linked below where he urban explores the attraction just before its demise in 2014. It was in rough shape with the props all covered in dust and foliage, and the dinosaurs themselves were even left in pieces. It wasn't soon after its closure that a different dinosaur meet and greet took its place. Raptor Encounter opened in 2015 in promotion of the new Jurassic World movie. And in 2018, Raptor Encounter was updated to feature Blue the Raptor from the Jurassic World movies, and it was moved to its new permanent location as well. At the same time, permits were filed to clear out the old location for a brand new Velocicoaster that would open in 2021. The whole area that once housed the Triceratops encounter was demolished, leaving only the entrance sign left as proof that it ever existed to begin with. There's an extinction joke in here somewhere. The only other attraction that I could kind of mention in this section of the park would be the Pteranodon Flyers. P-Flyers, as the locals call it, a kids ride located in Camp Jurassic. It's a 2-seater flying ride that gives you a bird's eye view of the park. It's been closed for almost a year now. However, I have heard rumors and speculation that it might be coming back. So fingers crossed that it returns, because I would really like to ride that someday. I just need to find a kid that fits the height requirement to do so. It is now time to talk about the island that has lost the most over the years, aptly named the Lost Continent. I personally would not be surprised if we lost it completely in the next 5 years. Originally, the Lost Continent consisted of 3 different sections. Starting closest to Jurassic Park, we had Merlinwood, then we had the Ancient Arabia section, and finally, we had a section for Greek mythology. Merlinwood was the first to go, cannibalized in 2010 with the creation of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Now, I will talk about that section of the land in just a bit, but for now, I want to focus on the attractions lost in the other 2 areas. Besides the rides in Merlinwood, the Lost Continent opened with 2 other attractions, a walk-through experience called Poseidon's Fury and a stunt show called The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad. Let's talk a little bit about each, starting with The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad, which was located just off the main walkway behind the Talking Fountain. It was a true sit-down theater show where guests could watch Sinbad and his sidekick Kebab embark on a death-defying adventure to save Princess Amora from the evil witch Azaria. There was sword play and bungee work, pyrotechnics, and a lot of corny theme park humor. The full show can be seen thanks to Attraction Magazine's linked below. The final show was performed in 2018 with no official reason given for the closure and no anticipated plans for the theater's future. According to some fans, it closed because the show was terrible. But some say there was low attendance, and others say it was Hagrid's motorbike adventure being simply too loud and causing interruptions during the show. Most recently, the theater was used in 2020 as a relief area for guests wearing masks during COVID. The set designs were all still up back then, and as of this Reddit post from a year ago, the set pieces are still there. These days, who knows what the future holds for either the vacant auditorium or the Lost Continent in general. What I do know is that Islands of Adventure sorely lacks shows, and with 2 vacant theaters, it's hard to believe that they can't think of something to fill those theaters with. Now, just outside the Sinbad show used to be a bazaar of shops. The streets were alive with entertainment options. A long-time defunct street show, henna artists, psychics, and metal carvers could be found. Some of those are still around today, but missing from the original lineup is the magic shop. This tiny shop, located just in front of the mystical fountain, was where guests could enter and see a free magic show performed by the team members that worked there. And at the end of the show, they could even purchase some of the magic tricks to take home and show their friends. These days, the All Hallows Eve boutique sits there in their place. It's basically a mini Halloween Horror Nights tribute store. The theme inside changes seasonally, and it's always got that perfect, spooky Halloween vibe all year round. Moving on to the Greek mythology portion of the land, the Lost Continent lost its very last attraction in May of 2023 when Poseidon's Fury closed its doors for the last time. Opening with the park, Poseidon's Fury was actually a completely different show. From 1999 to 2000, Poseidon's Fury was a tale between Zeus and Poseidon, where Poseidon was actually the antagonist in the original script. The grand scene at the end of the show consisted of animated versions of Zeus and Poseidon fighting to the bitter end. Linked below the original script, which was posted on touringplans.com back in 2013. It's really cool to kind of check out that history and see how the show changed. Many guests in the early days complained that the story was a little too hard to follow for them, and in response, Universal closed Poseidon's Fury and hired a third-party company to restory the attraction for cheap. The new Poseidon's Fury reopened in 2001 with a brand new story, including new characters, new effects, and a new grand finale scene. This time, guests would enter the Chamber of Poseidon. There, they'd meet their tour guide, Taylor, who, after losing contact with his mentor, the Professor, accidentally reads an enchantment to release Lord Darkanon, the antagonist of the story, from his 1,000-year slumber. Together with Taylor, the guests are ushered through multiple different rooms, deeper and deeper into the chamber, at least until Taylor reunites Poseidon with his trident. Then it's an all-out war in the finale room with fire and water effects, as well as a projected show with Poseidon and Lord Darkanon facing off one last time. For unknown reasons, Universal decided to shutter Poseidon's doors in 2023. The building has sat vacant and unused ever since. Poseidon's Fury was one of my absolute favorite attractions in Islands of Adventure. It was a must-do every time I went to the parks, so it was totally heartbreaking when they announced the closure, especially since they had just recently given the outside a brand new coat of paint, and then they closed the dang attraction. What's that all about? Why'd they do that? Open it back up. Thankfully, we have users like Theme Park Shark who have uploaded the full show on YouTube, linked below. Now let's move on to the final section of the Lost Continent and bridge into the conversation of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter as well. Merlin Wood was a section of the park themed towards all things European folklore. We had Merlin himself walking around doing meet and greets, the Dueling Dragons roller coaster, the Flying Unicorn Kids coaster, and the Enchanted Oak restaurant. Dueling Dragons was an opening day attraction. It featured 2 coasters, a red side and a blue side, that would be launched together at the same time. There were 3 near misses for the 2 coasters, including the iconic vertical loop, where riders would come within 12 inches of each other. Q was immaculately built, an ode to each dragon, Blizzrock, the ice dragon, and Pyrock, the fire dragon. This ride would be taken over when the Wizarding World of Harry Potter came about in 2010 and became Dragon's Challenge. It was the same ride, but this time rethemed to the 4th book of Harry Potter series, wherein Hogwarts is hosting the Triwizard Tournament. Around the same time, the dragon coasters also stopped dueling. This was due to injuries sustained by guests when passengers on one train threw objects at the other. Both dragons continued running, but never at the same time again. And in 2017, it was announced that the dragons would ride no more, dueling or otherwise. It was completely demolished in favor of the brand new ride, Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure. An equally thrilling roller coaster, and I think it's a perfectly acceptable replacement, but that's just my humble opinion. Next on the chopping block was the Flying Unicorn. It was the first ride to be added to Islands of Adventure after it opened. It was a response to guest complaints that there weren't enough smaller tier rides in the park. The story was simple. A wizard found a unicorn horn and harnessed its magical powers to allow guests to experience what it might be like to ride on a real unicorn. In 2008, it was announced that the Kiddie Coaster would be closing to make way for a hostile wizard takeover. In its place, the same coaster with a retheme called Flight of the Hippogriff. This time, guests were joining Hagrid in learning how to fly a hippogriff using a replica hippogriff, aka the ride vehicles. The last casualty of the Wizarding World was the Enchanted Oak Tavern and Alchemy Bar, which is now 3 Broomsticks and Hogshead, respectively. The restaurant is remembered by its incredible entrance facade of a giant oak tree, who in the lore of the park is actually the wizard Merlin, who was tricked by the Lady of the Lake and turned into an oak tree. The tavern was closed in 2008 with the rest of Merlin Wood. And that's it. That is the story of my beloved Lost Continent. Now, Harry Potter Land was new, but that didn't mean it was immune to the changing times. We've already discussed the loss of the Dragon Challenge coaster, but another big attraction that Harry Potter lost was a celebration of Harry Potter. It was sort of Universal's answer to Star Wars weekends. Starting in 2014, on the last weekend of January, the park held a big celebration of the Harry Potter series. The event featured film talent Q&A sessions, discussion panels, special demonstrations, photo ops, expos from Pottermore, film props and costumes, and so much more. Fans would flock to the parks for special panels and meet and greets with the stars of Harry Potter movies and the folks behind the scenes of the books and films as well. Some of the special guests over the years included Matthew Lewis, who played Neville Longbottom, Ivana Lynch, who played Luna Lovegood, Rupert Grint, who was Ron Weasley, as well as Tom Felton, who was Draco Malfoy, Robbie Coltrane, who played Hagrid, and many, many more. In September 2018, Universal announced that a celebration of Harry Potter would not take place in 2019 as the park was focusing on construction of Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure. And after no announcement was made in 2020, a celebration of Harry Potter was ultimately canceled. Regardless of how you feel about the Harry Potter franchise these days, and trust me, I do not blame you if JK's behavior has left a smudge on the legacy of this boy wizard, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter did play a pivotal role in bringing Universal Orlando back from the brink of closure. It helped put the resort on the map for vacationers to visit from all over the world. So, love it or hate it, fans of the parks owe Harry Potter's creation to the park still being around to this day. But I can and will still feel very bitter about my lost continent. The final land to cover in Islands of Adventure is, of course, Seuss Landing. This is another part of the park that is largely untouched by time. While a few things have been added or changed over the years, there hasn't much that's been lost in this area. The first thing to mention was the Seuss Street Show. Characters like Horton Hears a Who and the Grinch, the Cat in the Hat, Sam I Am would all come out and perform a show in the street. This is an experience that I have less than zero information on, but it was most likely discontinued due to guest safety. Another loss in this land is behind the Cat in the Hat, where this stage was once used for a show called Oh, the Stories You'll Hear. It featured Thing 1 and Thing 2, the Lorax and the Cat in the Hat, and of course a narrator would sit and read the Seuss stories to the kids in the audience. Now the show does still exist, they just don't use this stage for some reason. You can catch Oh, the Stories You'll Hear in the space between Circus Mercurgus and Sky Trolley. Speaking of Sky Trolley, this is one attraction that wasn't opened with the park. As a matter of fact, prior to 2006, this Sky Trolley was meant to be a totally different experience altogether. Originally designed as a Autopia in the sky, the Sylvester McMonkey McBean ride was meant to be a self-driving experience with multiple cars on the track at a time. Guests would be able to control how fast or how slow they went as they traveled along through the land. Due to either budget constraints or maybe just the inability to create this attraction, this idea was scrapped altogether, and in 2006, the High in the Sky Seuss Trolley train ride was opened. This is a very simple train ride above Seuss Landing, while one of 5 different Seuss stories are read to you. It's a very short ride meant for kids and adults of all ages to enjoy. A far cry from the original concept, but that's just how it is sometimes. And so we find ourselves back at the entrance of the park, right in front of the Pharos Lighthouse. We've made it all the way around the 8 Islands of Adventure. We've talked about a whole lot of change. You know, it is an inevitable truth that things will always grow and change. Theme parks are living spaces that need to evolve to stay relevant with the times and to keep guests coming back again and again for new and exciting experiences. Sometimes that means we lose beloved attractions like Dueling Dragons for something great like Hagrid's. But sometimes it means we lose attractions for no real replacement. Looking at you, Poseidon's Fury. Islands of Adventure is still one of my favorite parks to visit. This place brings such great nostalgia for me, but I also like to go often and see what has changed. New merch, new food, new characters, that's what it's all about. So while I gladly pay homage to the thrilling experiences of the past, I also look forward to the exciting changes of the future. If you think that this video should be a series that I continue, please give this video a like and comment down below letting me know. Subscribe for more videos like this every single month, and let me know what's your favorite Islands of Adventure attraction, past or present. Mine's definitely Spider-Man. Thank you so much as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!